Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 3. Now let's start the fanfic. We will now decide the 8th match, said Hayate as the screen started flashing through the names of the remaining 8 genin. The tension seemed to mount as the screen continued to speed through names without end. All the remaining genin were tensed ready for their turn to fight, well, all except a few. Gaara just stood motionless, not caring if he was the next to fight. He knew that whoever he fought he would satisfy his mother with their blood. Dosu just stared at the screen with a passive look on his face. The only ones left are the Ikibi Jinchuriki, the Hyuga heiress, and Akamichi, and Inuzuka, that pale Konoha genin, 2 Kumo genin and myself. My chances are good against any of the Konoha genin. I don't stand a chance against the Ikibi, and the 2 Kumo genin don't look that strong. However, their teammate proved that they are not to be underestimated, though they still won't be able to defeat me with my sound attacks, thought Dosu as he glanced around at the remaining competitors. Kiba was leaning against the railing with an arrogant smirk on his face. In his mind he believed no one could beat him because he was the alpha. Haha, none of these guys can beat me. I just hope I don't end up fighting Hinata-chan, he thought, glancing at his only female teammate. Though I have to say that blonde bitch from Kumo looks like she'd be fun, he thought with a perverted grin as he looked Yugito up down from the corner of his eye. Hinata watched the screen with the patented superior Hyuga look on her face. Ever since she had met Kurenai she had tried to imitate her Ice Queen persona, and in doing so had started following her clan's beliefs more and more. Eventually she had become a younger female version of her father in terms of skill, and the typical superiority complex her clan had multiplied tenfold inside of her. It doesn't matter who I face, they will lose, especially those bastards from Kumo. I'll make them regret trying to kidnap me. Sai stood with his sensei and teammates with an unreadable look on his face. He had been quietly observing the matches as they progressed, noting anyone who could be of value to his master. The Uchiha was an obvious choice as his master had wanted a pure-blooded Uchiha under his control for a while now. The branch Hyuga would be of value, however because of the caged bird seal he wouldn't be able to pass on the Byakugan. So far not many people here have something to offer Danzo-sama. The Uchiha and the Hyuga have promise, but we need others as well. Although that Kumo team holds promise if the offer members are just as strong as their teammate. Choji, unlike all the other remaining Konoha genin, was completely oblivious to what was going on around him, instead choosing to focus solely on the bag of chips he was currently shoveling into his mouth. Yugito was watching the screen from the corner of her eye, while she focused mainly on the Konoha kunoichi that were present. Like Naruto, she had noticed the glances the old Kage had sent towards the young kunoichi of his village. There was a strange glint in his eyes when he looked at them, but it wasn't perverted or something similar. It was a glint that held what appeared to be a calculative and plotting look. If any of those useless hussies even so much as look at my Naruto-kun, they won't be able to give birth when I'm through with them, she thought, letting her possessive cat nature show for a second as she tightened her hold on her boyfriend. I agree, kitten, if they try anything with our mates it will be hell to pay. But just to make sure they can't take away your mate's virginity, you should drag him off into a closet and not leave it for a few days. Once these prelims are over, came the demonic and completely perverted voice of Matabi as she sent images of her host in Naruto doing some very naughty things in a closet. Mata, I will not do that. We're only 13 for Kami's sake, we won't be doing anything like that for a few years. Replied Yugito, only to mentally slap herself as Matabi started demanding that she tell what her plans were and sending even more images into her head of an older version of Naruto and herself doing even more naughty things. Naruto had his eyes closed as he tried to decide on the best plan of action for when his match came up. I could easily kill any of the remaining competitors if we're to use your chakra Kurama, however that would make things a lot harder on us later on down the line. If I were to cripple them, then it would send a message that my team and I are not to be messed with, but that would probably make the old man panic and do something drastic, and that's something we don't need at the moment. He continued to think of the best way to go about winning his match until a familiar demonic voice came from his mind. Why are so concerned with the old man, thinking you are too far gone to save? I thought you wanted him to leave you alone, and the best way to do that is to send a message that he simply can't ignore. True Kurama, however, remember what Granny Mito's letter said. The vault containing all of the knowledge of my clan was entrusted and hidden by my father's clan. If we ever want a chance to regain the knowledge that once belonged to my clan, then I will need to get access to the Namikaze compound and try and find a clue as to where they hid the vault. The only one who knows where the compound is the old man, and if my plan for gaining access to it is to work, then I need him to still believe he can save me from Kumo, replied Naruto, getting a nod of understanding from his foxy tenant. True, Kit. And if your plan works, it will not only grant you the knowledge of your mother's clan but your father's as well. It will be a slap to the face of this hellhole of a village when they learn that they have lost the knowledge and skills that belong to the Uzumaki and the Namikaze. That is truly a move worthy of a fox, thought Kurama before they were brought out of their planning by the sound of the screen beeping, signaling it had decided on the next competitors. Will Kiba Inuzuka and Yugito ni please come down for the 8th match? Said Hayate as he looked away from the screen and started looking at the remaining competitors. Kiba grinned at the thought of fighting the hot Kumo bitch. Now was his chance to force her to submit to him and to claim her as his. He jumped over the rail with Akamaru following close behind him. Unknown to either of the partner Inuzukas, Kiba had released a small amount of pheromones that didn't go unnoticed by a certain blonde-haired shinobi. With Team 20, Naruto was about to give Yugito a kiss for good luck, but as he turned to face her, something in the air tickled his nose. Taking a quick sniff, trying to figure out what the strange scent was, he was suddenly overcome by a possessive nature as he pulled Yugito to him and held her tight. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Asked Yugito before the scent of pheromones hit her nose as well. Now she was no stranger to pheromones, as she released quite a lot of them whenever Naruto unleashed his power. Matabi had explained to her at a young age, unfortunately, about pheromones and the effects they can have on the body. She could tell by the scent that these pheromones came from a dog, but they didn't have any love or compassion in them, just lust and a little bit of arrogance. Thankfully, her body had gotten used to the feeling of much stronger pheromones when she and Naruto almost ravaged each other when they were both using their cloaks in training. She easily ignored the pheromones, but she couldn't stop the delightful shiver that ran down her spine at her boyfriend's words. Yugito-chan, don't let that mud lay a finger on you, or I won't be able to stop myself from killing the little bastard and then taking you to some secluded location and ravaging you, said Naruto with his voice taking on a demonic and lustful tone. Thankfully only she heard what he said, or their sensei might have something else to say about that idea. Nodding in acknowledgement, Yugito decided to try and reassure her boyfriend by giving him a kiss that could be considered a little indecent in public, but she could care less. Don't worry. He won't get the chance to even get close enough to me to touch me. With that, she jumped over the railing and landed in front of Hayate, with Kiba standing across from her with an arrogant smirk on his face and his eyes roaming over her body, making her shiver in disgust. Mata, if I can't finish this mud by myself in less than 5 minutes, I'm going to use the cloak and try the first of your jutsu out, thought Yugito to her perverted tenant. I agree, kitten. Judging by the look in this mongrel's eyes, he thinks he can make us submit to him. Let's show him what we're made of. The 8th match, Kiba Inuzuka vs. Yugito ni. Are the both of you ready? asked Hayate, receiving a confident nod from Kiba and a harsh glare from Yugito that had him suppressing a shudder and silently praying that he never pissed this particular kunoichi off. Begin, he shouted before getting the hell out of the way, knowing this particular match was going to be a shitfest. Now what's a hot girl like you doing with a loser like Blondie over there? I'm the one you should be with since I'm an alpha, said Kiba, releasing his animal dominance. Is he seriously trying to make me submit to him with this pathetic dominance? Naruto-kun lets out more dominance in his sleep. If this is his maximum dominance level, then he is no alpha, thought Yugito before she charged at the stunned form of Kiba. When she was in range, she spun around and nailed the arrogant mutt with a strong heel to the face. Akamaru just stood there stunned that his partner's dominance could be thrown off so easily. He turned to look at the girl who had just knocked his partner out and felt the dominance coming from her. He wasn't as stupid as his partner to think they were alpha status, but he could tell that this girl was an alpha female not to be messed with. Hayate stood stunned at how the Kumo Kunoichi had easily defeated the heir of the Inuzuka clan. If she could defeat a clan heir so easily and her teammate could kill one of our shinobis without breaking a sweat, this team is not to be messed with. If his teammates are anything to go by, Naruto should easily defeat any of the remaining contestants, thought Hayate before checking Kiba and finding him knocked out cold. Winner. Yugito ni, said Hayate as the medics came and took Kiba away. Yugito jumped back up to her team and was met with a searing kiss from her boyfriend that left her breathless and lightheaded. Way to put the mud in his place, said Karui as her two teammates continued to look into each other's eyes. Okay, that's enough for now, we don't need you two getting it on in front of everyone, she said rather loudly, producing blushes from all of the rookie 9 save for Sasuke, who was fuming at not being to activate his Sharingan, and Sai, who just kept his impassive expression. Kakashi was giggling like crazy. He took out a small notepad and started writing stuff down with the intention of sending this to his favorite author. With the Hokage, she seems to be fairly skilled. Getting rid of her will be harder than I anticipated, but nothing my Anbu can't handle, thought Sarutobi as he watched the scene of Naruto and the Kumo bitch trying to eat each other's faces. Soon Naruto, soon you shall be returned to your true home here in Konoha and nothing will get in my way. Back in the arena, the 9th match will be between Dosu Kinuta and Gaara of the Desert, said Hayate as said competitors sand shunshined and jumped over the railing respectively. Once they were both standing across from one another, Hayate gave them the signal to begin while jumping away. Dosu wasted no time and charged Gaara while pulling up his right sleeve, revealing his melody arm ready to strike. Gaara didn't even try to dodge, and when Dosu was in striking distance, sand shot out of his guard and caught the sound genin in a cocoon of sand. Mother will have your blood, said Gaara in his deadly monotone while raising his right arm with his palm facing the trapped Dosu. Now die, he said before closing his hand into a fist and crushing Dosu before he even had a chance to scream. With Team 20, so that's what Shukaku grants his host, the ability to control sand, though I have a feeling that he is only scratching the surface with his sand abilities, said Naruto as watched Gaara mercilessly kill Dosu before returning to his place in between his siblings. You're right, kid. When the sage and his son gave us our power, we each chose a different skill to specialize in. Shukaku chose to wield the power of sand and created many jutsu using this unique skill. His container has only scratched the surface of what Shukaku is truly capable of, thought Kurama before he laid back down for a nap. Lazy fox, thought Naruto before he returned his attention to the screen that had just stopped on the next two fighters. In the arena, will Hinata Hyuga and Choji Akamichi please come down for the 10th match, called Hayate as he glanced at the screen. Said Hyuga Eris jumped over the rail and stood in front of Hayate with the patented Hyuga smirk on her face. Choji of the other hand tried to hide behind the rails before Asuma bribed him with barbecue to get him to fight. Fighters ready. Getting 2 nods, he brought his hand down before jumping back to safety. Begin. Hinata wasted no time and charged forward with a barrage of Jiyuken strikes. Choji tried to dodge as many as he could, but a few managed meet their mark on his body, namely his legs. Hinata jumped back, seeing that her opponent was all but finished now that he couldn't dodge. Why don't you just go ahead and surrender? You're no match any Hyuga, especially not the heiress of the clan, she said with the classic Hyuga death glare. Poor Choji didn't know what to do. He could see that he had no chance of winning this match, not with the condition his leg was in, but he also didn't want to disappoint his sensei, plus all that barbecue was a very tempting reason to continue. In the end, he raised his hand and spoke in a resigned voice. Proctor, I forfeit the match. Hinata's smirk grew, if that was possible, when she heard that. It just reinforced her belief that she was untouchable because of who she was. With Team 20, what a bitch, said Yugito as she watched the 2 Konoha ninja walk back to their respective teams. She couldn't help but notice the scowl on Kurenai's face as she looked at her only female student. I guess that's why she doesn't mind leaving her team behind. The only decent one is the Aburame, while his teammates are both arrogant pricks. So that's the heiress of the Hyuga clan, not much of a kunoichi if that's the attitude she shows towards her own allies, said Naruto as he glanced at the only remaining competitor, other than himself. Something doesn't feel right about him. Since they are the last 2 competitors left, will Naruto, Uzumaki and Sai please come down for the final match, said Hayate as he fought down a coughing fit. Sai jumped over the rail and landed in front of Hayate with his still expressionless face. Naruto just stood with his team with an annoyed look on his face. Seriously, how many times do I have to tell them before they start using my true name? Screamed Naruto in his head while his eyebrow began to twitch. Naruto, Uzumaki, please come down for your match. Hayate tried once again, only succeeding in making said blonde's eyebrow twitch faster. How many times do I have to tell you people before you get it right? It's Naruto Namikaze, you idiots. He screamed before he jumped down to the floor, his face still displaying his annoyance. Hayate looked to the Hokage with shock and a little anger clearly written on his face. Sarutobi had personally told him that the boy's name was Uzumaki and that he was somehow related to his late sensei. Shaking off his shock, for the most part, he turned back to the 2 shinobi waiting for the signal to begin. Very well, the last match, Naruto Namikaze vs. Sai, are you both ready? He asked, getting a nod from Naruto while Sai just remained motionless. Begin. He said, just barely jumping away before Sai lunged forward with a brush and scroll in his hands. Naruto jumped back trying to figure out what his opponent's abilities were, a brush and a plain scroll. What the hell kind of technique could he use with those? His answer came in the form of a lion made of ink charging for him. Ink. He must infuse his chakra with the ink to control whatever he draws and use it as a weapon. Seems he's a long-range fighter and doesn't like to get in close, though with that tanto on his back he's probably skilled enough to hold his own if someone managed to get in close enough, thought Naruto as he continued to dodge the lion that Sai had created as well as a newly drawn tiger. Damn, if only I knew some water jutsu, then taking care of these drawings would be a piece of cake. How is it I'm blessed with an affinity towards every element, except the one that would make my life so much easier right now? Naruto ranted in his head as he continued to dodge the ink monsters that seemed to keep multiplying. Sai's mind. His skills don't seem to be as high as everyone expected. It would appear that Orochimaru's spy was more accurate about his skills than he thought Sai as he continued to bombard Naruto with his ink creatures. Still, if my master wants him brought under his control, then so be it. With that thought in mind, he made another ink lion before he moved his brush to the bottom of his scroll and with a few small strokes drew the main mind control seal that would control the branch seal he would place on his target. Unfortunately for him though, Naruto noticed his slight movements. What the hell was with those small strokes at the bottom of his scroll? Thought Naruto as he continued to dodge the ink monsters. Judging by the size of the strokes, and the area that he used for it, it probably a safe bet that it's some kind of seal. Now the only question is what kind of seal. I doubt it's a storage seal, and explosive seal is a possibility if he plans to incorporate it into one of his monsters. Damn, I guess I'll have to get in close and try and see what he's planning. With that he took out his ninjutsu and charged headlong into the swarm of beasts, much to the shock of everyone who didn't know him. Charging wind chakra into the blade, the fox head opened and surrounded the blade a small whirlwind. Raising his right arm so it was parallel to the ground, he jumped into the air once he reached the small army of ink creatures and began spinning at extreme speeds. Cloud style. Tornado blade storm, said Naruto as a tornado surrounded him and started slicing into the army of ink creatures with ease. For a brief second none of the spectators could see a thing as the ink creatures exploded into a shower of black ink. Taking advantage of the temporary distraction, Naruto moved behind Sai using speed that would have made a Junin green with envy. Looking where he saw Sai draw that small seal, he noticed what appeared to be the starter of a seal chain. A seal chain? There aren't many things that require a seal chain, so what could he be planning? Thought Naruto as he moved back to his original position. Even if I've just started learning about seals, the Uzumaki basics covered a wide range and already started going into seal chains. Let's see. From what I know, a seal chain can be used for explosives, barriers, preservation and mind control. Though on the inside he was surprised and a little disgusted that the Hokage would try to have a mind seal placed on him, his face never betrayed his feelings as it just remained impassive. Time to end this, and give Konoha another big surprise, he thought before going through a series of hand signs that his team recognized immediately. With Team 20, so he's getting serious already. Something must have pissed him off if he's already resorting to his ninjutsu, said Karui as she glanced at the Hokage from the corner of her eye. Why do I have the feeling that that old geezer is to blame for this? Because he is, said Yugito, catching the attention of her teammate and sensei. You wouldn't have noticed it unless you knew what to look for, but Naruto-kun's eyes hardened for a split second before returning to their expressionless state. I don't know what it is, but something set him off and no doubt it involves the Hokage. That's the only reason he would be using a jutsu with his black lightning already. He's planning on giving the Hokage a heart attack and something else to worry about. He doesn't know about his lightning style armor yet, but if he shows them he has the black lightning, they'll know he is of great importance to Kumo, and hopefully it will deter them long enough for us to come up with a plan to handle things. You're right, Yugito. Naruto knows the value of information and the element of surprise. He wouldn't reveal one of his greatest secrets and weapons to the enemy if he didn't have a plan, said Darui as he continued to watch his successor go through hand signs. In the arena, lightning style. Black lightning strike. He said as black sparks of lightning began to arc around his arm. Raising his arm so it was aimed at his emotionless opponent, a bolt of lightning blacker than an Uchiha's eyes shot towards a stunned Sai at speeds that could match a cage. With the Hokage, black lightning, has Kumo gone as far as to teach him one of their most prized techniques to try and corrupt him with power. Still, this does present a problem. If Naruto wields the black lightning, then Kumo won't give him up easily. We'll have to wait for an opportunity to present itself to return Naruto to his true home, although that won't stop us from eliminating that hangs of his arm. Be patient, Naruto, soon you will be home. With Kakashi, the black lightning and the lightning style armor. With him having both of those techniques in his arsenal, Kumo won't give him up at all. We can only hope that the Hokage doesn't try anything foolish, or it could lead to all-out war between Kumo and Konoha, and I already know where my allegiance would lie, thought Kakashi with a small smile towards his little brother. In the arena, black lightning that should be impossible, thought Sai as his face displayed an emotion for the first time in many years, fear. He hadn't felt such fear since he began his training under Danzo. He'd gone on multiple missions that would be considered suicide for most shinobi his age, and he had come back alive. But now it was clear, he was going to die and nothing could save him. All he could do was watch as the lethal jutsu made its way closer and closer to him, never once wavering in its speed or accuracy. "Forgive me, Danzo-sama, I failed my mission," were his last thoughts before the attack made contact with his chest, right where his heart was. He opened his mouth in a silent scream as the lightning spread throughout his body, turning his organs to ash. However, the lightning stopped at his chest as it pierced through his body, destroying his heart as it went. Naruto cancelled the jutsu and watched on as the lifeless body fell to its knees before falling face first onto the arena floor. There was no blood as the lightning had cauterized the gaping hole in his chest. No one breathed, no one moved, they were all too stunned at what they had just seen to do anything. Sasuke was, once again, scarred out of his mind at the power Naruto wielded. He would often still have nightmares about that day on the bridge, about the power that he had witnessed, the carnage he had seen, and the fear he had felt. He only now realized that he had only seen Naruto use one jutsu that day, and that he had decimated an army with nothing but his ninjutsu. Now he had seen what the blonde was truly capable of, the destruction he could cause with only one simple jutsu. He had read about that particular jutsu in the academy, and it was only a C-rank jutsu as it was designed to paralyze the target while causing minor burns on the body. That very same jutsu had just been used to punch a hole through someone's chest. Am I truly that weak compared to him? He thought as he watched the blonde walk towards his team, leaving the body in the middle of the arena. Sakura and Ino were reliving the fear they felt when they were on the bridge fighting Zabuza with this blonde and his team. After they returned from that mission, they weren't themselves for about a week. Their families tried to get them to talk about what was bothering them, but the only thing they could ever manage to get out of them was, demon, massacre. The only thing that had managed them to get out of their funk was for Kurenai to cast a genjutsu on them that helped them forget about what they saw. Now though, all those memories were resurfacing, and the fear they felt that day returned with a vengeance as they both slumped against the wall and lost consciousness as their fear once again overwhelmed their minds. Kakashi, Kurenai, Guy and Anko were all mentally congratulating their little brother on the win. The fact that he killed someone it never even crossed their minds. If anything, it made their pride in Naruto grow that much more. It proved that he knew what it would take to be a shinobi, and that he wasn't afraid about having to kill someone to fulfill his duties as a shinobi. Orochimaru was almost foaming at the mouth with what he was seeing. How had his spies not found out about this gem that would be in the exams? His main target may have been Sasuke, but this boy was proving to be a good second choice. I will deal with my spies later. For now I must find a way to mark this promising host to make sure he comes to me for power, he thought before he noticed that his old sensei was eyeing the boy similar to how he was. It seems I might have to postpone my plans for marking the boy. If Sarutobi-sensei is that interested in the boy, it could be dangerous to interfere with whatever he's planning for the boy. Besides, once the invasion is over, Sarutobi will be dead and I will have the opening I need to mark the boy. Hiruzen Sarutobi had seen many things in his time as a shinobi. He had watched his comrades fall at the hands of the enemy during the Second Shinobi World, he had witnessed one of Orochimaru's experiments he conducted before he fled the village. He had sent many shinobi to their deaths when he gave them a mission during the last World War, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight he had just witnessed. To see someone you consider a grandson kill one of your shinobi so easily and without so much as a hint of remorse, shook him to his core. Has Kumo corrupted him so much that he doesn't even feel guilt or remorse for ending another life, especially one so young? Or has he truly severed his ties with us? No, I will not give up. Deep down, I know that he is killing himself for the actions he is committing. Forcing someone to kill one of their own, Kumo has truly fallen from grace. Winner. Naruto Namikaze, said Hayate as he continued trying to get over the fact a genin had just used a C rank capture-based jutsu, like an A- rank assassination jutsu. But his skills with a sword remind me so much of Kushina-sensei, yet he looks so much like the fourth, thought Hayate. He immediately noticed the spark of life in his eyes when he wielded his sword. It was the same spark that Kushina-sensei always had whenever she used her own katana. There is no doubt then, he must be Kushina-sensei's and the fourth's son. I will have to speak to Kakashi about this revelation. If anyone would know the truth, then it would be him. Shaking off his shock and pushing his thoughts to the back of his mind for now, Sarutobi made his way down to the arena and called everyone who had won their matches down to stand in front of him. When everyone was assembled, he cleared his throat to catch their attention. Congratulations to all of you for making it this far in the exams. Now, before we begin the final part of the exams, everyone will draw a number from the box that Anko is holding to determine who will face who in the final exam. Anko stepped forward and started with her little brother before making her way down the line of genin. Now will each of you please read off your number for Ibiki? How did the preliminaries go, Hokage-sama? Asked Hiyashi Hyuga as the other clan heads nodded in agreement. They had been called into the meeting just after the end of the prelims, as such they never got to hear what happened from their children. Sarutobi sighed as he knew that some of what he had to tell them was going to cause an outrage. Everything went smoothly for the most part, except for a few deaths, said Sarutobi as many of the civilian council raised their eyebrows at this. Being rich civilians, they were in the mindset that nothing bad could ever happen in the village so long as they had ninja there to protect them, let alone someone dying. In total we had 3 deaths, 1 from the new village Odo, and 2 from our own village. That caught everyone's attention, especially the clan heads that hadn't been able to see their children before they came to the meeting. Who all has died, Hokage-sama? Asked Choza as he tried to remain calm in front of his leader, but his instincts as a parent were starting to take over. Seeing that all of the clan heads were almost to the point of hysterics, though they hid it well, Sarutobi decided to put their minds at ease. Don't worry, none of your children were among the deceased, he said as all of the worry left the clan heads to be replaced by an overwhelming feeling of relief. The fatalities were Dosu Kinuta of Odogakure, Masumi Tsurugi of Konohagakure and Sai of Konohagakure. Danzo's eye widened slightly when he heard one of his best operatives' names on the list of the deceased. How is that possible? Sai was one of my best. He was easily at the level a newly appointed Junin, who could possibly have the power and skill to kill him. He thought before the voice of his rival brought him out of his thoughts. As best as I could tell, their deaths were quick and efficient. Dosu Kinuta well Tagara of the desert, who seems to have a unique control over sand. He used this ability of his to wrap Dosu in a cocoon of sand and then crushed him to the point where there were no remains of the boy, said Sarutobi as the civilian council all had disgusted looks on their faces and were probably close to losing their lunch. The shinobi council, though, was intrigued with this ability. Elemental Kekkei Genkais were not all that rare, but one that granted the user control over sand was news to them. We'll have to look into this new ability, was the general thought process of the Shinobi Council. Masumi's death, however, was at the hands of one of the Kumo Kunoichi. This news brought scowls to the faces of the Shinobi Council. First, Kumo had the gall to kidnap the last heir of the Namikaze and Uzumaki, and now they kill one their aspiring genin. The Kunoichi, Karui, Naruto's other teammate, was the one who killed him. She used a technique called Kumo style whirlwind dance that allowed her to literally shred Masumi to pieces, said Sarutobi, spitting the words teammate. However, it was the death of young Sai that has disturbed me the most. Danzo raised a questioning eyebrow at this. How had the death of his operative disturbed the famed god of shinobi, and the professor? You see, he died at the hands of young Naruto. Of all the things the council was expecting, that was certainly not one of them. That Naruto could kill someone his age, let alone someone who should be one of his allies, just reaffirmed to the Shinobi Council that Kumo had brainwashed the boy to the point where he was just a mindless killing machine. But that's not all. It was the way in which Naruto killed young Sai that has me extremely worried. For you see, it would appear that Kumo has given Naruto the Black Lightning in hopes to corrupt the boy with power. Everyone on the Shinobi Council's eyes widened at this revelation. If the boy truly did command the Black Lightning, then getting him back into Konoha and under their control was going to be about 100 times harder than before. Danzo was deep in thought over these new revelations. If the boy was strong enough to defeat one of his most powerful and loyal operatives, then he must be a truly frightening shinobi. Now, factoring in having the Black Lightning at his disposal, and even he was beginning to fear what this boy might become. Even if the boy did kill one of our shinobi, it just means that we must move as soon as possible to return the boy to his true home and reverse all the damage that Kumo has done to the boy, said Inoichi, as he watched the fire return to his fellow clan head's eyes, as well as the eyes of the Hokage. Inoichi is correct. We must make plans to return young Naruto to the village, said the Hokage. However, the civilian council, who had been unnaturally quiet throughout the entire meeting, decided to speak up. We will not allow that demon to return to the village. You said it yourself, Hokage-sama. He killed one our shinobi, so he should be executed immediately. Screeched the ever-annoying banshee that was Tsuyuki Haruno. My daughter hasn't had a peaceful night's sleep ever since she returned from that mission in Wave. I don't know what he did, but that demon did something to my daughter, and I demand that he pay for what he's done. She was about to continue before an extreme blast of killing intent flooded the room, all of it concentrated on her. I would suggest that you shut the hell up, said Sarutobi in a voice that froze the blood of everyone in the room. Even Danzo had to suppress a shudder at the tone. Naruto may not be a part of this village for now, but my law about speaking of the Kyuubi still stands, and I will have you executed if you speak of it again. The seriousness in the old Kage's voice, along with an Anbu appearing behind her ready to carry out the deed, did what many thought impossible, silenced a pink-haired banshee. Now, as Inoichi said, plans must be enacted as soon as possible. How are the plans for having the clan heiresses seduce Naruto going? Smoothly. While I think most of us haven't had a chance to tell our daughters of the plan, I have already made arrangements to help remove the, said Hiashi as Inoichi nodded in agreement. While they were the only clan heads that had daughters, they knew that the other heads were already moving to have their clan's daughters assist in the plan. I have arranged for a small team of my clan shinobi to act as an assassination team to remove her. I have also made arrangements for a team of assassins from my clan to aid in the removal, said Inoichi as the Hokage nodded in agreement. He knew that his Anbu could easily remove the threat. However, it was a good idea to have two clans that made up most the village's assassination corps aid in the removal. However, I believe we should have a few backup plans in case for some reason the first fails. The other clan heads nodded in agreement. Their village hadn't earned the title of the strongest of the five, without having backup plans in place. Inoichi-san is correct. We need a backup if something goes awry with the first plan, said Shibi Aburame in the monotone that his clan was known for. No one spoke for a while as each of the clan heads was in deep thought about ways to return the wayward blonde. The civilians were also deep in thought. However, their thoughts weren't revolving around return a blonde shinobi safely to the village. No, their thoughts were revolving around how they could get rid of the blonde as soon as he was returned to the village, or better yet, kill him. Shadowed corner of council chambers. Those manipulative sons of bitches. When the boss finds out about what they have planned, he's gonna level this place. Although if Yugito-chan finds out, the clone shivered slightly at the thought of what his girlfriend might do. Judging from his reaction to Sai's death, Danzo is probably the one who ordered him to place that seal on me. Well, I guess I found my next target, thought Naruto, glaring at the head the root Anbu. I can't believe that the leaders of the strongest of the five would stoop so low just to get more power for the village. I mean, seriously, trying to seduce me with girls I hardly know, have no physical appeal whatsoever, and are completely useless in a fight. Do they think my standards are that low, or do they even think I have standards? You have standards, said a chuckling demonic voice from his mind. Shut it, Kurama. Or it's back to that dark corner of my mind for you. Screamed the clone, which instantly shut the demon fox up. Calming down a little, he watched Shikaku Nara stand up, trust a Nara to be the first come up with a backup plan. With the council, I have a suggestion, Hokage-sama, said Shikaku as he stood up from his seat. Kumo may have used it for power, but what if we used a loyalty seal on Naruto? In theory, the two different commands of the seals should cancel each other out and return Naruto's free will to him. Also, once he's free from outside influence, we should present him with his inheritance to help convince him to abandon Kumo. Sarutobi sat quietly contemplating the outcome of such a move, should they be forced to resort to it. After a few minutes of tense silence, the Hokage nodded slightly with a small smile forming on his lips. I agree, Shikaku, it might be a little risky, but if the outcome is what we want, it will be well worth the risk, he said as the other clan heads and the elders nodded in agreement. Danzo smirked slightly. The very same plan he had tried to use against the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was now being officially approved of by the Hokage himself. If the Hokage is approving this plan of action, then I can easily place one of my shinobi into the team sent to capture the boy and make sure they are the one to place the seal, he thought with his smirk increasing slightly. Very well, we will meet at the end of the week to discuss any other plans for returning Naruto to the village, said the Hokage before turning the clan heads, Inoichi and Hiashi specifically. Make arrangements for your daughters to begin seducing Naruto by tomorrow. The sooner we begin, the sooner Naruto will be back where he truly belongs. Sarutobi stood, along with everyone else in the room, before formally ending the meeting. If that is all, then this meeting adjourned. Like hell it is. With Team 20 same time. So sensei, what's the plan for the next month? Asked Karui as she and her team walked back to the hotel they were staying at. They knew that Kakashi and the others were following them, as per their orders from the Hokage, but they'd rather it be them than regular Konoha Anbu. I've already sent a message to the boss. He's sending B and Dodai ahead of him to assist in your training for the month-long break, said Darui as they arrived at their hotel room. Once Naruto had sealed the door using a basic Uzumaki seal, they opened the window to allow Naruto's siblings in. After everyone had a chance to settle in, Kakashi decided to start off the conversation. Well, it seems Sasuke isn't exactly happy about not being able to copy any of the techniques that were used during the prelims. Before I could stop him, he and his loyal lap dogs had already demanded a meeting with the Hokage and were being escorted by Anbu. When they discover the seal you gave me, they'll demand its removal immediately. Guy, Kurenai and Anko all looked slightly worried about this. If the council discovered whoever created that seal, then things would get really bad, really fast. To the surprise of all of them, Naruto just chuckled slightly before reclining against to the back of the couch he was on. So we have a spoiled brat throwing a temper tantrum, two love-struck puppies complaining about something that doesn't concern them, running to a group of morons who think they can do whatever they want. I don't really see a problem with that, especially not with the plan that I will be putting into motion soon, he said as he watched the varying reactions from everyone present. Yugito and Karui just treated this like any other situation involving their blonde teammate. They learned fast that with him around things are never normal. Darui just sighed quietly. His successor was always unpredictable, but he never thought that he would try something that involved going against a cage. Apparently he forgot who his successor is exactly. Kakashi looked intrigued with this little announcement. His little brother had something up his sleeve that he believed could get one over on the Konoha Council. This next month is going to be very interesting. His fellow Junin, however, still seemed concerned for their brother, though they looked willing to wait and see how things went. What exactly do you have planned, little brother? Asked Kakashi as he watched a foxy smirk the size of the Kyuubi himself spread onto the blonde's face. Oh yes, things are definitely going to be interesting. Council chambers. Like hell it is. The council stood rooted in place as the owner of the voice stepped out from the shadows. The whisker-marked blonde stood before the entire council with his arms crossed and a scowl on his face. It took everyone present, including the hidden Anbu, a few seconds to recover from their shock, but once they did, all hell broke loose. The Anbu that were tasked with security launched from their places all around the room, trying to subdue the blonde, and hopefully kill him by accident. The second the civilians realized who the voice belonged to, they began shouting at the Anbu to kill him. The clan heads moved to intercept the Anbu, hoping to stop them from making the biggest mistake of their lives. Sarutobi stood frozen as he watched the scene unfold before him. He couldn't believe that the one he thought of as his own grandson had been spying on the meeting. Shacking off his shock, he tried to bring order back to the chamber, key word being tried. The Anbu were too consumed by their hate to listen to their leader, and the clan heads knew that if they didn't stop the Anbu, then they would lose the last heir to two of the most powerful clans to grace Konoha. Naruto just stood and watched as 6 Anbu, each with swords drawn, raced towards him with the full intent of ending his life. Turning his head slightly, he noticed the clan heads racing in his direction as well. Judging by the speed they're moving and the fact they aren't fighting each other to get to me, they're probably trying to stop the Anbu, he thought before he noticed the Anbu were almost on top of him. Time for phase 1. With the Hokage, Sarutobi could only watch as the bear-masked Anbu swung his sword and cleaved the young blonde's head from his shoulders. At that very moment everything finally hit home for the aged Kage. His surrogate grandson, the legacy of his successor, was well and truly dead. He had failed as a Hokage, and he had failed to protect the only son of 2 people he thought of as his own. Minato, Kushina, I failed you, I couldn't protect Naruto. The civilians burst into cheers when they saw Naruto's head fall from his body. They were finally rid of the demon that had attacked their village all those years ago. They had avenged their loved ones and their fallen leader. Each was thinking that they would have to change the date of the village's annual festival from the day that the Kyuubi was defeated, to the day that the demon was finally killed. This Anbu will be hailed as the hero of our village, the slayer of the Kyuubi, was the general thought process of most of the civilians. The clan heads were frozen in place. They couldn't believe that the legacy of 2 of the most powerful ninja to come from their village had been killed, by one of their Anbu no less. If it was the last thing they did, they would make this particular Anbu suffer for the rest of his life, and anyone who tried to stop them would meet the same fate. Everyone was brought out of their thoughts when they heard the sound of a throat being cleared. Turning to the source of the noise, they all noticed Danzo sitting in his seat with a very calm expression. The reactions to this varied all around the room. The civilians believed he was just happy that the demon was dead. The clan heads were enraged that he could just sit there so calmly treating the situation as if it didn't matter at all. The Hokage, however, who found his voice first, and he wasn't exactly happy. How can you be so calm about this situation? One of our own Anbu just killed the only heir to the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans, not to mention this could lead to potential war between us and Kumo. The death of one of their shinobi at the hands of our Anbu will not go over well. Screamed the Hokage as his killing intent leaked from his body in waves. Danzo just turned to his old rival and smirked slightly. It wasn't his normal dark or plotting smirk though, it was a fox smirk. You know, old man, I'm surprised that your so-called elite Anbu couldn't detect a simple substitution jutsu, he said with a chuckle. Sarutobi looked confused for a second before Danzo vanished in a puff of smoke, putting every shinobi present on the defensive. When the smoke cleared, it revealed a very familiar, and very much alive, whisker-marked blonde shinobi. I am curious though as to how they became Anbu if they couldn't even detect a simple jutsu that most seasoned genin can detect. Before anyone had a chance to recover from their shock, the distinctive sound of another poof of smoke came from behind them. Slowly they all turned to the source of the sound only to see the headless body of Danzo Shimura lying in a growing pool of its own blood. His disembodied head staring at them, a look shock forever etched on his old face. Turning back to the source of all of the commotion, Sarutobi was the one to break the endless silence. Naruto, why would do something like? He asked, shock and disbelief filling his voice. Naruto just snorted before he glanced around the room, taking in everyone's reactions to the current situation. The civilian council looked disgusted at the body that lay dead at their feet, but they were doing their best to ignore it by glaring at him with all the hate they could muster, and even if he couldn't see their faces, he was sure the Anbu had similar reactions. To be expected, they always did blame me for everything that ever went wrong in their lives, even if I wasn't even in the village at the time. The Shinobi Council seemed to having reactions the exact opposite to those of the Civilian Council. They actually smiled slightly when it finally sank in that Danzo was dead and they were looking him as if he was the savior of the world or something. The Hokage, however, was a completely different type of reaction. He didn't even seem to notice the body of his one-time rival that lay not 5 feet away from him, instead choosing to look at him with relief mixed with a bit of disappointment in his eyes. Why? Because he tried to have Sai place a loyalty seal on me that would make me loyal only to him. I killed Sai before he got the chance and I just cut the head off the cobra before he could strike again. If his plan was successful, it would have interfered with my plan, said the blonde while he reclined back in the seat he now occupied. Sarutobi and the Shinobi Council raised their eyebrows at this, each wondering the same thing: what the hell does he mean by his plan? Seeing the question looks he was getting from them, Naruto sighed before he returned his attention to his audience. The first part of Phase 1 is complete, and now for the second part. I infiltrated this meeting to make sure you weren't planning something that could interfere with my plan. It looks like I made the right choice. Your plan to remove Yugito-chan from my side won't work, and you won't need to use a loyalty seal on me either. Shikaku-san was correct in saying that 2 loyalty seals on one person giving 2 different commands would cancel one another out. However, I already broke free from the seal that Kumo placed on me when they kidnapped me. What? How did you break the seal? Asked Sarutobi as relief flooded his system, and it showed as his posture instantly relaxed, believing that Naruto was of no threat to him and that he would ask to be returned to the village immediately. Said blonde noticed this and had to hide his smirk. Old fool, he's do exactly what I want him to. How I broke the seal's control is of no concern right now. What is important is that I warn you not to interfere with me and my team while the exams are still taking place. Doing so will put my plan at risk, and if I'm discovered, the consequences won't be pretty. As the old man told you earlier, I can wield the black lightning, but what you don't know is that ever since I broke the seal, I have been secretly collecting and copying scrolls containing information on every technique that Kumo has at its disposal. I only need a few more months to finish gathering everything, and once I have it, I plan to leave the Kumo and return here to my true home. God, I'm gonna be sick, boss will probably hurl after I dispel. No one could believe their ears. Even the civilians in Anbu couldn't argue against the idea of allowing Naruto to return to the village if he was bringing that much knowledge with him. The clan heads were over the moon with excitement at the idea of getting their hands on every jutsu and technique that Kumo had. Sarutobi was indeed pleased with the idea of getting all those new jutsu, but what was the true joy for him was that his surrogate grandson would be returning to the village soon. Very well, Naruto, we will not interfere with your plan. I only ask that you meet with us as much as possible while you are in the village to keep us up to date with your progress, said the aged Kage as the rest of the council, even the civilians, nodded in agreement with his statement. I'll come whenever I can, but I make no promises that I will be here regularly. My sensei is going to be training my team and I for most of the month-long break to help prepare us for the finals. However, I do have one request, he said as the Hokage nodded, signaling him to continue. I ask that you give me access to my birthright, my clan's compound here in the village, and access to the Hokage's personal library so that I can increase my knowledge of seals. Of course, Naruto, I will have Kakashi bring a map and the keys to your compound to you later on this evening. As for the library, I will leave instruction on where to find it and how to open it with the map Kakashi will bring to you, said the old man with his typical, grandfatherly smile on his face. Hook, line and sinker, he must be getting senile in his old age to not only give my access to the library but to give me its location as well. That or he's just plain stupid, thought Naruto as gave the Hokage a fake smile before he stood up to leave. I'll come by as soon as I can to report on my progress. Until then, I'll send reports to you via my siblings. I have to go before my team starts to wonder where I am. Oh, and before I forget, Sasuke Uchiha will be by soon demanding that someone examine him since he can't access his chakra. Before he start pointing fingers in the wrong direction, I was the one who gave Kakashi Nissen the seal, the block of his chakra. The reason I did it was because I didn't want my hard-earned techniques and skills stolen by an arrogant brat with a tree up his, he said before walking out the doors, with a Kyuubi-fied smirk etched on his face. Phase 1, complete. Now to let the boss know to proceed to Phase 2, the clone thought before dispelling in a poof of smoke after making sure he was alone. With Team 20, the real Naruto was sitting telling his team and siblings about his plan when he stopped all of a sudden, with a slight glaze in his eyes. Kakashi and Naruto's team recognized what was happening instantly. He was going through the memories of a clone that had just dispelled. He stayed that way a few minutes before his broke out of his daze and began cursing up a storm. When he finally calmed down, he was greeted with the sight of his red-faced siblings and team. Sorry about that, it's just some of the things that clone heard didn't really sit well with me, he explained. It seems the old man was planning to use the daughters of the clans to try and seduce me to give me a connection to the village. And if that were to fail, they were going to put a loyalty seal on me to get me stay in the village. My clone made sure they wouldn't try anything, though I doubt that's going to stop the clan heads from trying to get their daughters to seduce me so their clan get my clan's power. Before he could continue, however, he was cut off by a huge spike of killing intent courtesy of his enraged girlfriend. If any of those useless try to get anywhere near my Naruto-kun, I'll rip their throats out, she said, her voice taking on a demonic edge as her anger kept rising. Everyone slowly started backing away from the enraged Jinchuriki as she slowly started to leak out demonic chakra. Naruto didn't waste any time. The second she let out the first little bit of demonic chakra, he was over to her, and before anyone had time to say a thing, they were gone in a shunshin. What the hell just happened? Asked Anko after she got her bearings back. She turned to her fellow Junin only to see them just as confused as she was. They all turned to Karui when she let out a relieved sigh mixed with exasperation. Darui-sensei, you might want to postpone our training until the day after tomorrow. Judging from Yugito's anger this time, those two won't be back until midnight at the earliest, she said before she turned to face the four Konoha Junin. You guys might want to return to your regular duties. Whenever one of them gets that angry, it usually takes about 5 hours of making out for the other to calm the pissed off one down. After she finished, Kakashi lasted maybe 1 second before he started giggling like a little school girl with a blood stain growing on his face mask. Guy ran out of the room screaming something about the two blondes dampening their flames of youth with such unyouthful acts. Kurenai, despite her Ice Queen exterior, blushed so red you could easily mistake her for a ripe tomato. Anko, though, had a similar reaction to Kakashi. A little bit of blood dripped out her nose, but instead of giggling, she decided to comment on the situation. Damn, my little brother's already getting that kind of make-out session and he's only 13. Lucky bastard's probably going to get laid before he's 15, she said with a smirk as Kurenai's blush deepened and Kakashi was propelled out the window that was still open by a huge nosebleed at the image that his perverted mind came up with. Deciding to save the teasing for when the victims were actually present, Anko grabbed Kurenai by back of her bandages and dragged the stunned Junin out of the apartment and towards her favorite bar. Well, I'm going to bed. Knowing those two, they'll probably fall asleep wherever they're at right now, said Darui as he moved to his room to get some rest. Karui nodded in agreement and went to her own room with one last thought before she fell asleep. Anko was probably right about those two laying each other before they're 15. I just hope they don't make me an aunt before I'm 18. Hyuga compound main house. Hiyashi sat across from his eldest daughter, who seemed annoyed at being interrupted during her training. My daughter, I have a mission for you, said Hiyashi, catching Hinata's attention. During the prelims, did you see someone by the name of Naruto Namikaze? At Hinata's nod he continued, he is the son of my old rival Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage, and Kushina Uzumaki, the Red Death. Your mission is to seduce him so that we can get the power his clan possess for our own clan. You are to use whatever means necessary to seduce him, though you will have one minor obstacle to remove. The blonde that Kumo has put on his arm has to be removed. I have arranged for a team of assassins to assist in the removal, but I won't send them in unless you are unable to remove her yourself. Do you accept this mission, daughter? He asked, only to watch a smirk that could only be described as feral spread across Hinata's face. Of course I accept, father. With a lineage such as his, he is the only male in this village as worthy of me. There won't be a problem either. What could she possibly have compared to me, the heiress of the most prominent clan in Konoha? Don't worry, father. By the end of the Chunin exams, Naruto-kun will be mine and the will be dead, she said before she got up and left to continue her training, her smirk never faltering. Finally, a man worthy of me. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, soon you'll be right where you belong, by my side as it should be. Naruto walked through the forest behind the Hokage monument with his team and siblings following him. Kakashi had delivered the map to his clan's compound that morning along with instructions to the Hokage personal library. He and Yugito had returned early that morning only to be greeted by a smirking Anko and Kakashi, who hadn't let up in their teasing one bit since they left the apartment. I still can't believe that you're getting a 5-hour-long makeout session and you're only 13. Man, I said it last night and I'll say it again, you're gonna get laid by the time you're 15. Said Anko while Kakashi started giggling with a slight blood stain on his mask. Said Blondes blushed crimson for about the 100th time that morning. I swear, if this is the teasing we get when we go make out, then I don't want to imagine what Nissan will do when we actually do it, thought Naruto as he continued to lead them through the lush forests of Konoha. Knock it off with the teasing, sis, or I'll tell everyone your secret little fantasy, said Naruto with a smirk playing at his lips. Anko shut up instantly, a shocked look on her face. You wouldn't really do that, would you, little brother? She asked with a nervous laugh. The mischievous fox smirk on her little brother's face was the only answer she got. The little brat is starting to take after me more and more. They continued their journey in silence after that, with the only sound being that of Anko's murmuring about evil little brothers with big mouths. After another 20 minutes of walking, they came upon the beautiful sight that was the entrance to the Namikaze clan compound. Instead of the fancy iron-crafted gates that the other clan compounds were known for, the entrance to the Namikaze compound was a traditional torii gate with a brick wall surrounding the rest of the compound. At the top of the gate was the Namikaze clan symbol. 9 tomo surrounding the kanji for shinobi was carved into the wooden face of the gate in gold. No one spoke for what seemed like hours, but in reality were only a few minutes, before Kakashi decided to break the silence. Naruto, the gate is sealed with a blood seal that can only be released with the blood of a Namikaze or Uzumaki. Your mother and father were like parents to me. I spent most of my time when I wasn't on missions here with them. Your parents were true master of the art of sealing. With their combined knowledge and skill they managed to create the barrier that protects the compound. I still remember the first time your father showed me how the barrier worked, and to this day I am still amazed at what they created. The barrier around your compound is the ultimate defense, unbreakable except to those who know the secret behind it. Naruto, you need to stand in front of the gate and smear your blood on the seal in the center of it, Kakashi explained to amazement and confusion of everyone else. There wasn't any seal on the gate, just the opening that led into the compound. Hey Kurama, lend me your eyes for a second, said Naruto to his tenant. You got it, Kit, came the demonic reply from the fearsome Kyuubi. Naruto closed his eyes and felt the familiar prickling that signaled the change. Opening his eyes revealed the blood-red iris with slitted pupil and black sclera. Looking at the torii gate now revealed a light blue barrier preventing anyone or anything from entering the compound. His eyes widened when he saw the blood seal in the center of the barrier, seemingly floating in the air. Shaking off his momentary shock, Naruto stepped up to the invisible seal and after biting his thumb, smeared his blood on the seal, watching as it glowed for a split second before disappearing along with the portion of the barrier around the gate. While all this was going on, Kakashi had uncovered his Sharingan so he could watch the barrier's reaction to his little brother's blood. Yugito had followed her boyfriend's example and used Matabi's eyes to see the barrier and was suddenly hit with inspiration when she saw the energy moving through the barrier as if blown by a gentle wind. Kitten, that's a brilliant idea. Though it will take a long time to complete with all the factors that have to go into it. First, you need to be much more proficient in my special jutsus, and second, you'll need to be a borderline master of seals, or at least the barrier aspect of them, said Matabi as Yugito mentally nodded in agreement. Yeah, and that would mean more quality time with my Naruto-kun, she thought as an image of her and Naruto studying seals together entered her head, only to regret it immediately as her perverted tenant started teasing her and warping her original image to one of her and Naruto doing some very perverted things in a public library. Mata, we're too young for that, and who the hell would doing something like that in public other than you? Hey Yugito, wake up, shouted Karui, snapping her out of her thoughts with her tenant. Huh, What? Was her intelligent reply as she tried to get her bearings back. I said, come on. Everyone's already exploring the rest of the compound, she said before grabbing her female teammate's hand and dragging her through the gate. The sight that greeted them was one they wouldn't soon forget. The main house of the compound was at least 3 stories tall and was built in the traditional Japanese style. The walls were a stained black wood with some intricate designs carved into the columns in the corners of the house. The roof was made out of obsidian black tiles that gleamed in the light of the noonday sun. Off to the side of the house they could see a large lake with koi fish swimming just below its surface. Whoa! Breathed the 2 stunned kunoichi. The house seemed to give off an aura of comfort, and yet there was an underlying feeling of dread for anyone who wasn't welcome. Hey, you two, check this out. The sound of their male teammate's voice knocked the 2 stunned kunoichi out of their stupor. Running to where they heard Naruto's voice, they found him standing with their sensei and his siblings looking out over the area behind the house. Behind the house was a training field easily the size of the Konoha Stadium, with lush trees surrounding the area helping it to blend in with the forest around them. Off to the side of the house there was a hot spring that had Yugito and Karui almost drooling at the thought of the relaxing water working its magic on their bodies. Well, let's take a look inside. After that I'm gonna find my father's library, said Naruto as he walked back around to the front door with everyone following. When they reached the front door, Naruto used the key that Kakashi had given him that morning and opened the door for everyone to enter. The entry hall was fairly simple with a few paintings hanging on the wall. On their left was a doorway leading to a fairly large kitchen with a doorway to the living room just opposite the kitchen door. At the end of the hall they could see a hallway leading to some back rooms with a staircase next to it. Let's get our things put away then get some training done. We can explore the house later, said Naruto as he moved towards the steps where Kakashi indicated the bedrooms to be. After everyone was settled into a room, with Naruto taking the master bedroom, they all met up in the spacious living room to decide on what their next move would be. Now that we're all settled, we can start your all's training for the finals, said Darui as he watched his team nod in agreement. Naruto, for now see what you can find in your clan's library and train with that. Also try and find out any information on where your ancestors might have hidden the Uzumaki vault. Yugito, see what fire jutsu you can find in the library and work with those until Dodai and B arrive to help. Karui, I can only teach you so much kenjutsu since our styles are so different, but in the meantime I'll train you in a few more water jutsu until we can find someone to help you with some more advanced kenjutsu. Actually Darui, I might know someone who can help with that, said Anko, catching everyone's attention. You probably don't know this, but Kurenai and I were on the same genin team along with Hayate Gecko. We were taught by your mom Naruto, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. She was an expert in almost every field of the shinobi arts and we each took after her in one way or another. I took after her in assassination and ninjutsu, Kurenai obviously took after her in genjutsu, and Hayate took after her in terms of kenjutsu, and he's the best kenjutsu user in the village at the moment. He came to me after the exams and asked me if Naruto was indeed Kushina sensei's son. When I told him you were, he swore on his life as a shinobi to help you in any way he could. I think he would be more than happy to assist in your all's kenjutsu training. Naruto sat thinking for a few minutes before nodding his head. Turning to Anko, he gave her the okay to find him and bring him to the compound to help with their training. As soon as the words left his mouth, Anko and Kurenai were out the door in search of their teammate, their squeals of happiness still lingering in the air. Okay, those two scare me, said Karui as she suppressed a shudder. Everyone else nodded in silent agreement. It was scary how fast the 2 kunoichi could go from there, Ice Queen, persona to giggling, squealing teenagers. Well, while those two are busy, let's get started, said Naruto as he stood up. Kakashi, You and Guy head out and find the entrance to the Hokage library. After you know where it is, come get me and we can begin phase 2 of the plan. With a nod from the Junins, they left in a shunshin to begin their search, knowing that their little brother's plan couldn't go forward without the library. Yugito-chan, let's head to the library and start our studying. Karui, when you're done with Darui-sensei you can join us, okay? With that, the blonde couple walked towards the back of the house, leaving their smirking teammate and sensei in the living room. Let's hope they don't do anything naughty, right, sensei? Said Karui as she watched the couple leave. Right. Well, I guess we better get started too, said Darui as he stood up and headed towards the training field in the back with his red-haired student following. With Naruto and Yugito, our two favorite blondes had just reached the library, and were having trouble keeping their jaws attached to their bodies. The library was huge. From what they could see, it was almost as large as the master bedroom, which took up a good chunk of the third floor. Somehow managing to pick his jaw up off floor, Naruto took a closer look around the library. Shelves upon shelves of books and scrolls lined the walls in the middle of the floor all the way to the back of room, where he could just make out the outline of a vault door. Come on, Yugito-chan, let's take a closer look, he said, breaking his still dazed girlfriend out of her stupor. Nodding in agreement, the two of them started to explore the library and figuring out where everything was and how it was all sorted. The first thing they noticed was that the scrolls and books were sorted by into the 5 major categories: ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, sealing and kinjutsu. The ninjutsu section was further sorted into the 5 elemental categories and non-elemental ninja arts. These sections were further sorted by the ranking of the jutsu, starting as low as D rank and going all the way to S rank techniques. The genjutsu section was split into 2 sections, offensive and supportive, which were again sorted by rank. The taijutsu section was sorted into offensive and defensive styles, with a branch section for kenjutsu styles. The kinjutsu section, however, was only sorted by ranking, with the lowest rank being B rank. However, unlike the other sections in the rest of the library, this one was sealed behind a wall of glass with a blood seal in the center. The section on sealing was simply sorted into beginner, intermediate and advanced sections. Well, what do you want to start with, Yugito-chan? Well, I'd actually like to start learning more about seals, specifically the barrier aspects of them, said Yugito as she continued looking through the fire style part of the ninjutsu section, and missed the million-watt smile that appeared on her boyfriend's face. Yugito-chan wants to study sealing with me. This has got to be one of the greatest days ever, screamed Naruto in his head while a chibi version of him was doing a victory dance. Yeah, now you two will have more time together and you can finally claim her as your mate, came the demonic voice of Kurama as he sent a mental image of Naruto and Yugito doing some very indecent acts in the Namikaze library to his blonde container. Naruto had to clamp his nose closed to prevent being blasted back by the massive nosebleed that came with the image in his head. We're only 13, you pervert fox, we can't do anything like that yet. Yet, said Kurama with a raised eyebrow, that's it, back to the dark corner of my mind for you. With that, Naruto cut the connection with his tenant with the screams of terror from the great Kyuubi lingering in his head. Well, if you want to learn sealing, Yugito-chan, then I'd be more than happy to teach you the basics, said Naruto, only to receive a searing kiss courtesy of his very happy girlfriend. After Naruto managed to untangle himself from his still very excited girlfriend, he gave her his famous fox grin before taking out a scroll and unsealed the scroll that had the Uzumaki sealing basics in it. Well then, let's begin. With Darui and Karui same time. Alright Karui, for now I'll be teaching you a new kenjutsu technique. This technique is unique because only people who have a natural affinity for lightning style jutsu can perform it. It's called Kumo style, lightning saw, To perform this technique you must channel your lightning chakra into your sword and form it into a serrated edge along the blade. Once you have the chakra formed you need to slash at whatever your target is while releasing the chakra in your blade so that it forms into a flying saw that is almost impossible to block. When you have the technique down, this should be the results, said Darui as he drew his cleaver sword and began channeling chakra into blade. If one looked close enough they could see the faint outline of saw-like teeth along the edge of the blade, with the occasional arc of lightning flashing between the teeth. Raising his sword, Darui swung it at one of the many target dummies in the training ground behind the Namikaze house. From the sword a spinning saw of pure chakra launched at the dummy and cut through it like butter before dissipating into the air. This is a B-rank technique, and very difficult to master due to the incredible amounts of chakra control required to perform the technique. It will most likely take you the entire month to train this particular technique, but if Naruto's plan goes smoothly then you will have many more techniques to learn from the Hokage library, and if he agrees then Hayate himself. Alright sensei, I think I'll start training with that technique later on tonight. How about we work on another elemental jutsu for now? Asked Karui while she mentally went through the steps she could take to help learn the lightning saw faster. We'll save elemental jutsu for when the whole team is together. For now though we'll work on increasing your chakra control by having you walk on water while sticking the tips of Senbon to your body with your chakra, said Darui as a sadistic smirk crossed his face, one that Karui recognized instantly. The only time sensei ever gets that smirk on his face is when he plans on putting Ennius through one of his Hell Run training sessions, thought Karui as she took step back in fear of what her sensei had in mind for her training. I should have gone with Naruto and Yugito to the library, was Karui's last thought before she began her hellish training in chakra control. With Kakashi and Guy same time. Are you sure we are going the right way, my eternal rival? Asked Guy, and the two Junin continued jumping from roof to roof. Positive Guy. Minato-sensei once took me to the library to put the information regarding the Chidori and Reikiri into it as A and S rank assassination jutsus respectively. I don't remember the exact location, but I do remember the general area it's in, said Kakashi as they stopped on a roof a few blocks away from the Hokage Tower. We're close. There are 2 Anbu in the area, most likely guards to stop any intruders who manage to get this close. Looking over the area they were in, he noticed a small warehouse a block from their position. Remember Kakashi, sometimes the most powerful secrets are hidden in plain sight. The voice of his deceased sensei drifted through his mind as the memory of his time in the library surfaced. Flashback. Minato-sensei, I thought you said we were going to the Hokage library to add in my Chidori and Reikiri to the archives. Asked a young Kakashi. His sensei had told him that they needed to add in his 2 creations so that any future assassination specialist could have access to them for high-profile missions. This doesn't look like a place that would hide the village's greatest secrets. Chuckling, Minato turned to his prized, and only remain student. Kakashi, don't you always say to look underneath the underneath? As shinobi we must not take anything at face value because nothing is ever as it seems. Remember Kakashi, sometimes the most powerful secrets are hidden in plain sight, said the 4th Hokage as he led his silver-haired student into the small warehouse a few blocks from the Hokage Tower. End flashback. Found it, Guy, said Kakashi as said green spandex-wearing shinobi moved over to look at the warehouse. Not exactly the place I would have chosen to hide the village's greatest secrets, he said as he continued to look at the building. Maybe, but it's like my sensei once said, sometimes the most powerful secrets are hidden in plain sight. Come on. Let's get back to the compound. Naruto's going to want to start the second phase of his plan as soon as possible. Nodding in agreement, the 2 Junin took off, back to the Namikaze compound, both eager to see what else their little brother had planned for their former village. Namikaze compound later that night. Team 20 sat across from Naruto's siblings in the living room of the Namikaze house, with one extra face present. Hayate Gecko sat in between his two former teammates, staring at Naruto with a pleading look in his eyes. Noticing the look in his new guest's eyes, Naruto decided to get things started. Hayate-san, my sisters say that you studied under my mother with them, and while I trust their judgment, I would like to confirm some things for myself, said Naruto as Hayate nodded in understanding, silently asking him to continue. First off, if my mother was still alive and she had decided to leave the village for some reason, would you follow her, or would your loyalties stay with the village? Hayate, to everyone but Anko and Kurenai's surprise, didn't hesitate in his response. Your mother, Naruto, was the closest thing I have ever had to a mother. Like you, I never had the chance to meet my parents, but when I was placed on Kushina-sensei's team I finally found the closest thing to a mother that I would ever know. She took me in, the same way Minato-sensei took in Kakashi. They were my family and my loyalties to my family have and always will be greater than that of my village. No one spoke for a while, all of them overwhelmed by the emotion in Hayate's voice as he spoke of his former sensei. Anko and Kurenai had each grabbed one of his hands in the middle of his story. They knew how much their former sensei meant to him, so they did their best to try and comfort him. However, the silence didn't last long as Hayate it seemed wasn't finished yet. When I found out sensei was pregnant with you I was overjoyed, but that was nothing compared to the joy I felt when sensei asked if I would like to be your big brother. But then the Kyuubi attacked. By the time I made it back to village from the mission I was on, Minato-sensei had already sealed the beast, and when I asked the third about it, he told me that Kushina-sensei had died in childbirth along with her son. After that I fell into a depression that soon became an illness. I felt as if I had no reason to live. I just went through the motions of life, not caring or paying attention to anything. When I learned who you were during the prelims, I couldn't believe it at first. It felt too good to be true, but after Anko and Kurenai said it was really you I was elated. I still had a chance to be the big brother I always wanted to be, and for that dream and in honor of my late sensei, I will follow you wherever you go, help to train you and your team in whatever I can. After what this village has done to you, they no longer deserve my loyalty. My loyalty now lies with you, my family. Naruto stood up at the end of Hayate's speech and walked over to the sickly Junin, silent tears falling from his eyes. Kneeling before the swordsman, Naruto enveloped him in a brotherly hug, the joy of finding a long-lost sibling overwhelming the both of them. Anko and Kurenai could only smile at the scene. They had tried many times to convince Hayate that Naruto was indeed Kushina's son, but every time he would ignore them, saying that Kushina's son was dead. To finally see the two together as it always should have been, was enough to bring tears of joy to the eyes of the Ice Queens. Kakashi was smiling under his mask at the scene. He and Hayate had been the closest things the other had to a brother because of their senseis. For him, seeing the two brothers united like they should have been from the beginning was almost too much for the famous copy ninja. Guy had anime tears running down his face at the scene. He had been trying for years to bring Hayate out of his funk with his youthfulness only to fail. Now his little brother had finally done what he couldn't. In his mind a chibi Guy was going on and on about his little brother's flames of youth. Pulling away from the hug, Naruto smiled at Hayate before rejoining his team on the opposite couch. After that I don't think any of my other questions are necessary, so let's get you caught up with everything that's been going on, said Naruto before going into a brief, but detailed explanation of everything that had happened up to that point and what else they had planned for the coming month. At the end of the explanation, Hayate couldn't hide the evil smirk that crossed his face at the thought of what his little brother had planned for the third Hokage. Payback's a bitch, you lying bastard, thought Hayate as he continued to listen to his brother's plans and what they would be focusing on training-wise for the month-long break. Alright, now that everyone's been brought up to speed, I think it's time to begin Phase 3 of the plan, said Naruto as he made a shadow clone and with a nod disappeared in a shunshin. Well, my clone gets things moving again, how about we get a little ninjutsu training in? With nods of agreement from everyone, they made their way out to the training field behind the house. Soon the Raijin will be back where it truly belongs, in the hands of an Uzumaki, thought Naruto as he watched Kakashi demonstrate a new wind technique he would be learning. Hokage Tower. After Clone left, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat at his desk going through the endless paperwork that continued to appear. I swear, sometimes I wonder why I agreed to take this position, he thought as he stamped yet another document with his official seal. He was interrupted from his work when he heard the sound of a throat being cleared. Slightly startled that he hadn't sensed the person's arrival, he looked up into the smiling face of his surrogate grandson. Ah, Naruto, what can I do for you, my boy? Asked Sarutobi with a smile, though he was silently wondering how Naruto had achieved such advanced stealth abilities. To be able to sneak up on me is no easy feat. Little did he know, Naruto, the answer to his question. Old fool must really be going senile if he didn't sense my approach, that or he thinks he doesn't have to worry about anyone trying to attack him while he's in the village. Actually, I have a request to make of you, said Naruto, catching Sarutobi off guard slightly. What do you know of the Raijin sword? Well, it is a legendary blade that is said to have been forged from a lightning bolt with the ability to cut through anything and everything it comes in contact with. My former sensei, the second, actually wielded the blade in combat many times, however it was stolen from the village a few years back by a rogue ninja by the name of Aoi Rokusho, said Sarutobi, not caring if he was divulging village secrets to someone not even from his village. What? These fools allowed some useless traitor to steal an Uzumaki treasure. I swear if it's the last thing I do, this village will pay for its crimes against my clan. If it has been stolen, then I most ask that send out a team to retrieve the blade immediately. The Raijin is a key factor in whether or not my plan is successful. If I don't have it, then it could not only mean the failure of my plan, but also result in my death, said Naruto as he watched the Hokage's face go from confused to horror in mere seconds. Senile old man is playing right into my hands. Don't worry, Naruto, I promise that by the end of the week you will have the Raijin in your possession. For now, why don't you go train for the finals, and if you run into any of your siblings please send them to me immediately, they will be leading the mission to retrieve the Raijin for you, said the aged Kage as he signaled for his Anbu to go and find said Junin. Well, Naruto, I guess we'll be heading out now, said Kakashi as he and the rest of Naruto's siblings stood by the gate to the Namikaze compound. Naruto had relayed the information from the clone he sent to the Hokage a few minutes ago, and the five of them had quickly gathered their gear and prepared to leave for the mission. Naruto nodded in understanding as he stood with his team. He understood that this was a critical part of his plan, but that didn't mean that he wasn't upset that his siblings had to leave for an undetermined amount of time. Be careful, and hurry back, he said as he gave each of them a hug and a kiss on the cheek in Anko and Kurenai's case. With a few final goodbyes, the five Junin took to the trees headed for the Hokage Tower to receive their mission. Team 20 decided to get a little bit of training in before they went to the village's main gate to meet up with B and Dodai, who were due to arrive later that day. Once they reached the Namikaze personal training grounds, Darui stood in front of them while they stood at the ready to start their training. Well, this seems familiar, said Darui with a smile as he remembered his team's second C-rank mission. Well then let's get started. I think it's about time that you all learn some more advanced jutsu. I'll be teaching each of you a B rank jutsu. Karui, for this jutsu you'll need a lot of water, so don't try and use it in a fight unless you have a substantial water source. It's one of the signature jutsus that all water style users are known to have in their arsenal, said Darui before he started going through a lengthy chain of seals before finally ending in the bird sign. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. From the pond that was connected to the training ground rose a large dragon made entirely out of water. Its yellow eyes glowed with power before hurtling itself towards one of the many target dummies that was set up in the field. The effects of the jutsu were instantaneous. The dragon clamped down on the target while the rest of its body crashed into the target, completely destroying it. Karui had a hard time keeping herself from drooling as she watched what the jutsu was capable of. With that kind of power in her arsenal, no boy would dare try and smack Harrigan. The main weakness of this jutsu is the long chain of seals necessary to perform it, so before you even attempt to use this jutsu in battle Karui, you'll have to get your speed with hand signs up to par. Now, Yugito, I've already taught you all the fire jutsu I know, so I'll be teaching you a lightning one instead, said Darui as he went through a considerably shorter chain of seals, lightning style, raising lighting jutsu. After he said this, the area around the target dummies began to shake violently before hundreds of large lightning bolts erupted from the ground in random locations and intervals, burning and destroying any target it came in contact with. This jutsu is one of the best ones to have in your arsenal if you ever find yourself facing someone who specializes in close quarters combat. The lightning will make it almost impossible for them to get near you without running the risk of being severely injured or killed by the lightning bolts, a perfect jutsu to have when you're facing someone like a Hyuga. Yugito nodded in agreement. It was definitely a jutsu that could come in handy in a fight against someone like Hinata. Naruto, I didn't plan on teaching you this A-rank technique until after the exams, but given the rising threats in this village, and Orochimaru potentially being here as well, I'm willing to make an exception. The technique I'm going to teach you is a black lightning technique that can only be used with the black lightning, my signature technique, said Darui as he went through a couple of hand signs, while Naruto stood transfixed watching him. Sensei's signature technique. He couldn't mean. His thoughts were interrupted by Sensei's voice. Lighting style. Black Panther. Darui's body erupted with black lighting before a panther made of pure black lightning launched from his body and completely destroyed the target dummy it struck. Naruto stood transfixed at the display. His sensei had told him about his signature jutsu, but never would he have believed that he would be learning it so early on in his training to use the black lightning. When he first started his training, Darui had told him that every user of the black lightning had his own signature technique that they created once they had completely mastered the black lightning and would only teach it to their successor when they believed they were worthy enough. After going over the hand sings and the mechanics of each jutsu, they all set about learning their respective jutsu with determination set in their hearts. With Kakashi's group, Sarutobi looked over the 5 people who stood before him with a small smirk on his face. They were the 5 most powerful Junin that their village had at its disposal, but they were also the adoptive siblings to one Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto is not ready for his father's name. He may live in his father's home, but he's still too young to handle the responsibility of taking the mantle of Lord Namikaze. He kept telling himself this every day. But now was not the time to dwell on those thoughts. Now he had to send these 5 elites on a mission that could determine the fate of Naruto depending on its outcome. Thank you all for coming so quickly. I have a mission that is of great importance to the village, and more importantly, to Naruto himself, said the Hokage as he watched the 5 Junin instantly tense at this piece of information. What is the mission, Hokage-sama, and how does this concern our Otudo? Asked Anko, with concern clearly visible on her face. Inwardly though, she was mentally patting herself on the back for putting on such a great performance. I should get an award for this, she thought before returning her attention to the Hokage as he began his explanation. The mission is an S-ranked retrieval mission. The target is Aoi Rokusho. You are to kill him and retrieve the Raijin that he stole from the village. Even though Aoi is only an A-ranked Rouge ninja, the importance of the mission is what makes it an S rank. Naruto's plan cannot succeed without the Raijin. If we want him to return to the village unharmed and with all the knowledge that he is gathering, he must have the Raijin to make Kumo think he is working with them and turning against us, said Sarutobi as he handed Kakashi the mission scroll. That scroll contains the mission parameters in greater detail, as well as whatever info we have on Aoi. You leave immediately. This mission must be completed before the finals of the Chunin exams begin. With a chorus of, "Yes sir," the 5 Junin vanished in a swirl of leaves. With Team 20 1 hour later. Our 3 favorite genin were currently practicing with the jutsu their sensei had demonstrated for each of them. Karui was standing in the center of the pond in the training ground soaking wet. She had been trying to get the jutsu down ever since her sensei showed it to her. So far she had managed to form a dragon, but it was only a few feet long, nothing near the monstrous size of the one her sensei had shown them. Cursing under her breath, she began going through the long chain of seals again, only to be met with another dragon barely 5 feet long. Yugito was bent over. Her breathing labored as she took a short break to observe her progress with her new technique. All around her were small holes that were the result of her many attempts at the rising lightning jutsu. While she managed to make the lightning break the surface, she hadn't managed to raise it any higher than about 3 feet, with barely enough electrical energy in them to give someone a good jolt as a wake-up call. Wiping her forehead, Yugito stood back up before going through the hand signs again, with a cry of, lightning style, rising lightning jutsu, multiple lightning bolts, about 2.5 feet tall broke through the surface of the training ground. When the jutsu died down, she let out a frustrated sigh before beginning the chain of seals again, mentally thanking her large chakra capacity. Naruto, if it was possible, was even more frustrated than both his teammates combined. While he had managed to surround his body with black lightning, it was only for a few seconds before the lightning faded back to its natural bluish hue. While anyone else would consider this an amazing achievement considering the difficulty of the technique, to Naruto it was almost insulting. The fact that his sensei had deemed him worthy of learning his signature jutsu before he was even a chunin was overwhelming to the blonde. That alone was more than enough motivation for him, but when you factored in the potential threat of Orochimaru, only someone with a death wish would try and interfere with the blonde's training. Let's take a break for a while team, we need to go might be in Dodai at the gates, said Darui as his team begrudgingly stopped practicing their newest techniques and walked over to him. Come on, B and Dodai are probably already waiting for us, he said as his team nodded and began heading back towards the village, each of them muttering curses about not being able to get their jutsu down faster. Darui couldn't help but smirk at his team. Despite the differences between the 3 of them, they were all ninjutsu specialists by trade and not being able to get a jutsu down was driving them nuts. Walking through the village, Team 20 couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. They knew it wasn't Konoha Anbu, and they knew they weren't being followed, but the uneasy feeling of someone watching them just wouldn't go away. With Hinata same time, Hinata stood on the roof of the main house in her clan's compound with her Byakugan activated and searching the village for her target. She had been trying to find him ever since her discussion with her father, and so far she hadn't been able to find any trace of him. At first she had thought that he might have left the village to return to Kumo and train for the finals, until her father told her that participants in the finals of the exams were not allowed to leave the village. When she found that out, she redoubled her efforts in trying to find the elusive blonde. While unintentional, the constant searching she did using her Byakugan had helped to increase her range of vision with her dojutsu. Today though, she had a feeling things would be different, that something was going to happen that would forever change life as her village knew it. Finally, she thought as a smirk crossed her lips, she had found her target. He was walking through the village square towards the gates with his team, and while she would prefer him alone, she would take whatever opportunity she could get. Jumping from the roof of her clan compound, she made her way towards Team 20 with every intention of walking away with a new boyfriend. With Team 20, the feeling of someone watching them seemed to only increase as they approached the gates. They were each preparing for a fight, when all of a sudden, Yugito's body went rigid and her hold on her boyfriend's arm tightened. Darui and Karui were worried. Not many things could cause Yugito to tense like this, especially with Naruto at her side, but when she did it usually meant something bad was going to happen. Naruto, while worried, was also on high alert. He knew Yugito's body language almost as well as his own. Whenever her entire body tensed, it usually meant she sensed a powerful and threatening chakra coming towards them, but when her grip turned into a vice, it only meant one thing. Taking a sniff to confirm his suspicions, he smelled it, pheromones. Like the ones he had smelt coming off of Kiba in the prelims, these pheromones held no love, only lust. One drastic difference between these pheromones and the ones from the prelims was the fact that they were from a female, and a powerful one at that. Tightening his own hold on his girlfriend, Naruto tensed his muscles ready for anything, his sensei and teammate following his actions. They didn't have to wait long as at that moment, Hinata Hyuga dropped down in front of them with a smirk on her face. "Hello, Naruto-kun," she said in a seductive voice that had Yugito growling dangerously at the arrogant heiress. Hinata, seemingly ignorant of the danger she was putting herself in, walked or more like strutted closer to our favorite blonde shinobi. "I'm curious, Naruto-kun, why would someone like you, who is heir to two of the most powerful clans in history, hang around no-name, clanless peasants like them?" asked Hinata as she wrapped her arms around Naruto's right arm and pressed it in between her ample B-cups. Karui and Darui tensed at this, not the intended insult itself, but they knew it would bring about. Glancing over at Yugito, they moved to interfere before it got out of hand, only to be stopped by a look from Naruto that showed he had the situation under control. Yugito was getting angrier by the second. This useless hussy had the nerve to call her boyfriend, Naruto-kun, and now she wrapping herself around him like the she is. "I swear, if this bitch doesn't get away from my Naruto-kun, I'm going to rip her chest off," thought Yugito as she fought to stay, and her tenant wasn't exactly helping. "That winch, if she thinks she can touch our mates like that, then she has another thing coming. Yugito, use my chakra and turn this into charcoal. Mata, as much as I wanta, I can't just go demon on her because," Yugito's thought were cut off when she heard the Hyuga whore talking to her boyfriend again. "I can understand you hanging around them out of pity, but why would you soil and degrade your name and date one of them? What does she have to offer you and your clan? She doesn't come from a prominent and influential clan and her skills as a kunoichi are pathetic. I, on the other hand, am the heiress of the most prominent clan in Konoha. I was the top kunoichi in my graduating class, and not to mention I'm the most appealing girl in the village, while she's nothing but a flat-chested." Time seemed to slow down as Hinata continued talking. It stopped entirely with that last insult. Darui and Karui were scared out of their minds. First, this arrogant heiress tries to wrap herself around Naruto with Yugito standing not a foot away, and now she just said the one thing that could set off the maelstrom that was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Yugito's attempts at trying to stay calm shattered into a million pieces after Hinata finished her rant. That's it. This bitch is going down and she's going down hard. Mata. Give me everything you can, we're turning this whore into ash. Thought Yugito as even her inner voice took on a demonic edge. You got it kitten, kill that sorry excuse for a mate stealer. Was her demonic tenant's reply before her system was flooded with Matabi's demonic chakra. Naruto was fighting the urge to cut Hinata into tiny little pieces. His anger had risen with every insult she directed at his girlfriend, but that last one was the straw that broke the camel's back. He was about to draw his blade when he felt the familiar demonic chakra of Matabi start to leak out of Yugito. Abandoning all thoughts of killing the arrogant Hyuga heiress, Naruto forcibly removed his arm from her grasp and wrapped both of his arms around Yugito before using Shunshin to get them both out of the area so he could focus on calming her down. With B and Dodai, the two elite Kumo Junin had been waiting at the main gate for Team 20 to meet them to start their training. They were just about to start roaming the village in search for them, when they noticed a familiar mop of blonde hair approaching them. Smiling at the sight of their favorite genin team, the two started towards them to meet them halfway. When they got within earshot of Team 20, they noticed that they seemed distracted, like they were trying to find something or someone. They soon realized the cause of their problem when a young girl about their age dropped down in front of Team 20. Even though they couldn't see her face, they knew that the young girl was a Hyuga just by the way she held herself. She had the patented superior Hyuga air around her and she spoke like she was superior to everything and everyone around her. They watched and listened as the Hyuga girl greeted Naruto, but completely ignored the rest of Team 20's presence. When she wrapped herself around Naruto's arm, they were worried that Yugito would do something drastic in blind rage that another girl had the nerve to touch her boyfriend like that way. They tensed when she started in on how she was superior to Yugito. They were worried that Naruto might end up being the one to do something instead of Yugito and it would take everything they had, plus Darui, just to hold back the blonde. When she finished her rant, both men were already moving to interfere with the situation, knowing full well what Naruto would do to anyone who said that about Yugito. Before they could reach them, however, a spike in demonic chakra was the only warning they had before the two blondes of Team 20 vanished in a shunshin. With the rest of Team 20, Darui and Karui breathed sighs of relief before turning their attention to the Hyuga heiress who had been unceremoniously dropped on her when Naruto pulled his arm from her grip. Glaring at the wide-eyed girl, Darui spoke with his voice laced with killing intent. Let this serve as your one and only warning. If you so much as come near my student like that again, I will personally end you. Though, there won't be much of you left after Yugito gets done with you in the finals. Hinata stood up and wiped the dirt off of her before turning to face the pissed Kumo Junin. It doesn't matter what you say, Naruto-kun and I are fated to be together. We are both the heirs of our clans and as such we are the only ones worthy of the other. His heritage as an Uzumaki and Namikaze is only matched by mine as a Hyuga, said Hinata as she turned and started making her way back to her clan compound. She was stopped though by a deep voice that for some reason sent a terrified shiver down her spine. I would heed Darui's words if I were you, girl. Heritage means nothing when it comes to love. Naruto and Yugito love each other with everything they are, and they don't take kindly to someone trying to separate them. They are the only thing that calm the other when one of them is truly pissed off, but when both them are pissed, nothing will spare you their wrath, said B as he and Dodai walked up to stand next to Darui and Karui. Hinata just scoffed and starting on her way back to her clan compound, with only one thing on her mind, no matter what, Naruto-kun will be mine. The group of Kumo ninjas sighed before Darui started leading them back to the Namikaze compound to wait for their favorite blondes to return, though that might not be for a while. Chunin Exam Stadium a month later. Team 20 stood facing the packed and restless audience that had shown up to watch the finals of the Chunin exams. With them were the rest of the genin that managed to pass the prelims. Gaara and Tamari hadn't changed at all over the month-long break. Gaara still wore his emotionless mask while Tamari had a confident smirk on her face. Shino was being the typical Aburame, calm, cool and collected even the face of such an important task about to take place. Like his fellow Konoha genin, Shikamaru was being the typical lazy Nara, somehow managing to doze off while standing and take a quick nap. Neji and Hinata were also being the typical stereotype that their clan was known for, though for different reasons. Neji was glaring at Hinata out of the corner of his eyes. It seemed he still held a grudge against her in the main house. Hinata was openly glaring at Yugito. Ever since their little meeting in the village, Hinata had made no other attempts at Naruto, but there was something in her eyes that told them that she had something planned. Sasuke was also glaring at a member of Team 20, though his attention was held by the lone shinobi of the team. It seemed Sasuke had found out how the seal that blocked his chakra got onto him and he wasn't too happy about it. Everyone's attention was drawn to the cage box as Hiruzen Sarutobi made his appearance along with 2 Anbu guards. Not long after the Hokage appeared, the cage made his own entrance along with his own guard. However, it was the last one that appeared that held everyone's attention. Soon after the cage took his seat, decided to make his own appearance along with B and Dodai as his guards. Cage box. Ah. Welcome Lord Cage, Lord Raikage, I hope your journeys here were pleasant, said Sarutobi as the other 2 cage nodded in acknowledgement. Indeed it was Lord Hokage. I am very excited to see how these finals will play out, said the masked cage. You're getting soft old man. By the end of these exams you will be dead and I will be one step closer to obtaining the Sharingan, thought Orochimaru from behind his veil. Lord Cage is right, these exams should prove to be very interesting indeed, said as he looked down at the arena to see all of Team 20 looking at him with determination in their eyes. Well, you brats managed to keep your promise about all of you being in the finals. Now make me and everyone in Kumo proud by becoming Chunin, thought the Raikage before he turned to see the cage about to speak. I couldn't help but notice Lord Hokage that these exams seemed to have quite a selection of competitors. The heir to the Nara clan, the heir to the Aburame clan, the heiress of the Hyuga clan and the most powerful branch Hyuga in generations, and of course the last Uchiha, an interesting combination indeed. Frowned slightly, while he understood that his ninja weren't commonly known like the clans of Konoha, it still pissed him off when someone overlooked them because they don't have a prominent clan name. While I agree that there are many prominent clans represented here today, I also believe in the old saying a diamond in the rough, and I believe my village is being represented by 3 of them, said with a smirk at Team 20. Sarutobi had to suppress a smirk at hearing this. You young fool, if only you had the experience to see underneath the underneath. Think what you want right now, but in a few months' times you will learn the truth, he thought before standing to address the crowd that had gathered and begin the exams. Welcome everyone to the finals of the Chunin selection exams. Before we begin, I would like to congratulate these young ninja on making it this far in the exams. Now without further ado, let the tournament begin. Once the Hokage finished, the stadium erupted into cheers and applause. With Naruto's siblings. So Naruto's matches first, said Kurenai as she turned to face everyone else. Getting nods of agreement, she turned back to the arena where the proctor, Genma Shiranui, was speaking to the genin. I wonder how he'll do against Neji, what do you think, Guy? Guy had an unusually serious expression on his normally smiling face. Over the month-long break, Guy hadn't had any contact with his team because of the mission they were on and because of the plans they had to come up with for leaving the village. Next to Guy, his mini-clone Lee also had a serious expression on his face. He had been brought in on the plan because neither Guy nor Naruto could stand to leave without him. Naruto will have a tough fight ahead of him. He may be more powerful than Neji overall, but Neji is called a genius of the Gyuukin for a reason. I wouldn't put it past him to have something up his sleeve that not even his own clan knows of, said Guy as he watched the genin leave the field, leaving Naruto and Neji to fight the first round. Everyone nodded in agreement with Guy's analysis of the situation. They knew Naruto would definitely win, but the path to that victory would be a dangerous one. Well, little brother, now's your chance to show everyone exactly what you're mad of, said Kakashi as he watched Genma getting ready to start the match. In the arena, all right, the two of you ready? Asked Genma, getting a nod from both boys. Okay then, the first match, Naruto Namikaze vs. Neji Hyuga, begin, shouted Genma before jumping out of the way. Neither of them moved, each staring the other down for what seemed like hours. The silence was finally broken by Neji, who spoke with his usual superior Hyuga tone, though it was laced with venom and hatred. Finally, my chance to avenge my father has come. Once I defeat you, the only one left to deal with will be my pathetic excuse of a cousin. Prepare yourself, only one of us will walk away from this match alive, and it won't be you. With that, Neji activated his Byakugan and charged Naruto with only one thought, to avenge his father's death by killing Naruto. Said blonde immediately went on the defensive when he realized that Neji wasn't kidding. If the accuracy of his strikes in the places he was targeting were any indication, he really was trying to kill him. Naruto kept swerving in and out of Neji's strikes and redirecting those that he couldn't avoid. Deflecting another Gyuukin strike to his chest, he saw an opening in Neji's guard and took it. Grabbing onto his opponent's wrist, Naruto pulled him in closer and delivered a massive knee to his stomach. Releasing his hold on him, Naruto jumped back to get some space between them before going through some hand signs. Wind style. Gale palm jutsu, said Naruto before thrusting his right palm out towards Neji, sending a violent gust of wind at the gasping Hyuga. Forcing himself to move despite the pain in his stomach, Neji barely managed to avoid getting struck by the attack. Righting himself, Neji slipped into the opening stance of the Gyuukin and waited to see what Naruto's next move would be. It seems he's more skilled than even I gave him credit for, but I have figured out most of his skills. He has an affinity for lighting and wind style jutsu, and large chakra reserves, since he doesn't even seem the least bit drained from using so much in that last attack of his. I have to keep him from drawing his ninjutsu. If the technique he used in the prelims is any indication, he can easily defeat me if he were to use it. But I have the advantage in taijutsu. If I can manage to get him within my field of divination, this match will be over, thought Neji with a smirk before charging at Naruto once more. That took a while. He must have been analyzing my attack style. Too bad for him, he hasn't even seen half of my skills, thought Naruto as he started dodging the lethal strikes of the Gyuukin once again. Oh well, enough playing defense, time for some fun. Jumping out of Neji's range, Naruto made a familiar cross-hand sign before three clones appeared beside him. Smirking as one, the four Narutos vanished in an impressive burst of speed, only to reappear surrounding Neji on four sides. Going through hand signs once more, the four blondes finished in unison before launching their attacks at the Hyuga prodigy. Lightning style. Black lightning str. Ike. Arms arcing with black lightning, Naruto and his clones raised their arms and four bolts of the lethal lightning shot at Neji, who seemed frozen in fear of the attack, no doubt remembering its effects from the prelims. Shaking off his temporary shock, Neji was forced to reveal one of the techniques he had learned over the month. Expelling chakra from every point on his body, Neji began rotating in place, forming a dome of chakra around him. Rotation, came the voice of Neji as the crowd watched in awe as the four bolts of lightning collided with his defense, causing a massive explosion to rock the arena. Everyone held their breath as they waited for the smoke to clear, only for it to reveal Naruto and Neji standing across from one another, unmoving. Despite being a branch Hyuga, you're able to perform the so-called ultimate defense of the main family. I must admit, I'm mildly impressed. You must have worked hard to achieve that technique, but you still won't win this match, said Naruto as he gazed into the glaring eyes of Neji's Byakugan. Said Hyuga's scowl depended when he heard this, causing the veins around his eyes to bulge more. It doesn't matter what you say, fate has already decided the outcome of this match, and it shall end with your death. Screamed an enraged Neji before he slipped into a strange stance, crouched slightly with one arm out in front of him with the other raised behind him. You are in the range of my divination. With Hiashi and the Hyuga elders. It can't be. How can a branch member have possibly learned those techniques? Asked a random Hyuga elder as the others started whispering in agreement. While all of this was going on around him, Hiashi was staring at his nephew with a frown on his face. Is this what you truly seek, Neji? Is avenging your father all that matters to you? Thought Hiashi as he glanced at the competitor's box, more precisely, a certain Uchiha. It would seem revenge has become a common trait in this year's Genin. With Naruto's siblings. Naruto is in trouble if this attack hits, said Guy as he watched the fight with a growing frown on his face. How could I have missed Neji's thirst for revenge so easily? The signs were all there and yet I never noticed. It seems Kakashi wasn't the only one who had an Avenger on their squad. What do you mean, Guy?